Hi everyone, I'm Nora Crone. I'm a violist in New York City, and today I'm going to be talking about how I recovered from musician's vocal dystonia. So I think I should start by acknowledging that musician's vocal dystonia is a very complex condition. And as far as I'm aware, current understanding of the precise mechanisms at play during the development of the condition, how it manifests, and how recovery works is not at all certain. So what I'm gonna do in this video is attempt to describe, based on my own personal experience, how I was able to emerge from this condition and play again. So when I realized that I was dealing with dystonia, and yes, I was officially diagnosed by one of the leading experts, I immediately started doing research, as you've probably done yourself. And what I discovered was that a small but significant number of musicians had recovered through some form of retraining. Now, what that meant in each individual case seemed pretty different and often very personal, since by and large these were people who had to find a way through completely by themselves without any kind of a systematic roadmap for recovery. But what these musicians had in common was that it was some combination of observation, intentional movement, and time that helped them recover. That much seemed clear to me. So I tried working with a few different people with expertise in this form of rehabilitation, as well as on my own. But it actually took a year until I found the approach that really set me on the path to recovery through a violinist named Sophie Till. The Till approach is a system of string playing that is derived exclusively from principles of healthy body mechanics and applying the same kind of physical logic that we use in everyday life to the act of playing. And believe it or not, learning this approach to playing actually enabled me to recover. I'm also thrilled to be on the faculty of the Till project, which enables me to share this information with others. So what do I mean by physical logic? I'll give you an example. If I ask you to touch different parts of your face with different fingers, you probably touched one place at a time and then picked up your entire arm to move the next finger onto its spot, even if it was quite close by. That's just how the brain processes movement, being fully in one place at a time, then taking the same recipe, in this case, the alignment of the finger, hand, and forearm as a unit, to the next place. It's actually the same as when we walk or run. So even if we're running very fast, our experience is step, 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 rather than of leaving the old foot planted to the ground while we take a new step. Now, instead of touching one place at a time on your head, try leaving the old finger down and stretching across to the new spot. Now, all of a sudden, we're dealing with something very different and frankly, a bit nonsensical. So if I feel happy and comfortable here with my forearm and hand aligned behind my finger, and I want to feel happy and comfortable here, let's say, then the sensible thing to do is to bring the same recipe to the new place. If instead I stretch across, this finger no longer has the exclusive support of my hand and forearm, and I have a completely different recipe. The same is obviously true on the instrument. So here I'm just bringing that same recipe from place to place, rather than stretching. So this is just one tiny example, and I'm sure it brings up all kinds of questions like, but how can you play fast that way? Or what about double stops? And yes, there are absolutely ways to do both of those things that don't conflict with the basic physical logic that we use instinctively in every other area of our lives. I can't get to them in this short video, so stay tuned for more in this series. And if you want to know more about the specifics of the Till approach, I invite you to check out the link to our website, which I will put down below. Unfortunately, many aspects of traditional teaching do conflict with this basic physical logic. And it was certainly true in my case. Often we've learned them so young and practiced them for so long that not only are we not aware of them, it's nearly impossible for us to do something different without making a conscious change. And so if it so happens that you are not currently injured and you're not interested in changing your technique, maybe you'll decide that things are fine the way they are, and that's totally okay. What I will say is that the till approach not only helped me recover from dystonia, it's actually a profoundly sensible, efficient, reliable, and useful way of approaching playing that makes me feel so much better at the viola. I actually don't regret the injury that helped me find it. So, whether we're dealing with an injury or not, most of us have to some degree absorbed what we would call alien logic in the realm of the instrument. Sometimes that just means that things are less efficient or comfortable than they could be. Sometimes it means that we have pain, tendonitis, carpal tunnel, or some other type of injury. And now how exactly that alien logic employed over time develops into dystonia for some people is the part that is still poorly understood. And I don't pretend to have an answer to that. What I can say is that gradually uncovering the many manifestations of alien logic that were present in my technique is ultimately what helped me recover. Here's how I think that happened. So early on in my recovery, it felt like on one side I had these dystonic symptoms, in my case curling in my left hand, ring and pinky fingers. And on the other side, I was learning this new technique which started with very fundamental things that seemed miles away from the source of my symptoms. I mean, it took a month before I was even touching the string. But that process of building the new system from the ground up is actually vital, and it's what sets this approach to dystonia apart from the others that I encountered. And the reason that it's effective, at least based on my experience, was that the symptoms weren't just some tick in my nervous system manifesting in some random place. They were completely housed in a particular context, a playing context. They were actually the inevitable result of my particular combination of brain chemistry, cognitive traits, life experience, brain maps, and the habitual movements associated with those maps. And over time, I came to experience that undesired movements and sensations, some sort of curling, or later just a feeling of losing control, were inextricably linked with the firing of an old pattern in my brain, some of that old alien logic taking hold again. And when I stopped and painstakingly walked my brain through the correct context for the movement, I could feel my brain saying to itself, oh, in this context, those dystonic movements don't make any sense. In a way, the dystonic movements became unnecessary. They were rendered obsolete by the new context. I'll give you an example. So if we're coming from a technique of leaving our fingers on the strings and peeling them off one by one, like this, what can sometimes develop is a sort of isolated extension and retraction, especially of the pinky. And this kind of thinking, which I can still fall prey to from time to time if I'm not careful, used to immediately trigger curling in my left hand. And in a way, that's not so surprising given the movement that I'm trying to execute. But if instead I use a forearm rotation to remove those fingers from the string, which is a major element of the till approach that I can't get into in this short video, that forearm rotation removes the old finger from the string with no need for the finger to do an isolated lift or retraction. So that's just one example. Now, it took a while, but as my brain gradually filled out the details of this new picture of playing and the old habits were erased, the dystonic symptoms accompanying those habits disappeared as an inevitable consequence. The other important aspect of my recovery, apart from changing my technique and concept of playing at the deepest level, was how those changes allowed physical transformation of parts of my body that had been very misused over a long time. So this part of my palm, in particular, was essentially totally collapsed because of years of stretching. Now, once I stopped stretching, I began to redevelop the picture of a healthy version of this area, and my brain regained the ability to regulate the tone in these muscles, which of course are crucial for supporting the ring and pinky fingers and controlling their movements. In a nutshell, gradually dismantling the context that was generating my dystonic symptoms and replacing it with a system of playing recognized by the brain as fundamentally healthy and reliable, eliminated my symptoms. Now, I'm not saying that's all that happened. Like I said, musicians' focal dystonia is a very complex condition, and I would never attempt to explain it at a neural level. But what I can say is that the process of learning healthy and sensible movement, exquisitely applied to the instrument and to making music, changed my brain. In future videos, I'll talk more about the recovery process and offer some physical guidelines and practical tips. But for now, I want to end by saying that, in my experience, the best way to recover from musicians' focal dystonia is to work directly with someone who understands the condition and your instrument and has an approach to playing that has proven to be effective in addressing it. So I hope that this video has been helpful in some way. If so, I would love it if you would take a moment to like it and subscribe below. And of course, please share it with others who you think could benefit. If you want to know more about me or want to get in touch, please visit my website, www.noracrone.com. I'm wishing you the best. Take care. See you next time.